Hi, welcome to BTS150, whether you're taking this in the spring or if you're taking this over the summer. I'm Professor Tara Woodward, also Reverend Woodward or Pastor Tara. A little bit about who I am. I've called many places home, whether that was the golden grasslands of Nebraska, where I grew up, the sunflower fields of Moldova, where I did a summer of service, the cornfields of Iowa, since I am an alumni of Northwestern, the Farminary New Jersey Garden at Princeton Seminary, and most recently where I did a pastoral fellowship, the Red Breast Dirt of South Africa. Each of these places have really shaped my love and academic interest and place and pedagogy, as well as agrarian readings of Old Testament, especially Old Testament sacred texts. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm an alum of Northwestern College, and I have a dual Master of Divinity and Master of Arts of Christian Education and Formation from Princeton, as well as a Master of Arts from Western Theological Seminary. You might see the Reverend at the end of my title. Sometimes I go by Reverend Woodward as well. That's because I'm also an ordained minister of Word and Sacrament in the Reformed Church of America, or RCA, that Northwestern's affiliated with. And I currently serve as a campus minister at the University of Northern British Columbia. Just to begin our time together, I would love to share these course epigraphs which appear on your syllabus. So give me just a second to share my screen. Just to begin our time together, one of my favorite scholars is Ellen Davis, and in her book, The Art of Reading Scripture, she says that whenever we pick up the Bible, read it, put it down, and say, "That's just what I thought," we are probably in trouble, which there's probably been a few times that might happen to you in this course. She also says in her book, Getting Involved with God, Rediscovering the Old Testament, that the key piece of good news that the Old Testament communicates over and over to us again is that God is involved with us deeply and irrevocably so, intimately so, she even says later in her book. And she quotes Karl Barth in her book in saying that when we read scripture, it's like putting on glasses and we see the world in a different way, which is why I've included this quote from him that says, I've read many books, but the Bible reads me. And then a pastor or the person that maybe you've read the Message translation from, Eugene Peterson, says that when we submit our lives to what we read in scripture, we find that we're not being led to see God in our stories, but our stories into God's. God is the larger context and plot in which our stories find themselves. And I hope that you find within this course that your stories are within the story of scripture, and you start to see those echoing themes, which will be part of your final assignment. He also says that we're fond of saying that the Bible has all the answers, and that is certainly correct. The text of the Bible sets us in reality that is congruent with who we are as created beings in God's image and what we are destined for in the purposes of Christ. But the Bible has also all the questions, many of them we would rather soon as never asked of us, and some of which we will spend the rest of our lives doing our best to dodge. The Bible is the most comforting book. It is also the most discomforting book, which you might experience some of those comforts and discomforts in our course together. Just to give you a bit of a description of our course, we'll be doing this over 5 different themes: creation, covenant, Christ, church, and consummation. And this is less of like a timeline and more of a narrative arc, and the way in which God unfolds this story in scripture and history, and how God even unfolds this within your own story through various sort of foreshadowing and echoing themes that kind of run throughout scripture. It's a narrative arc that blends at times. You might see those patterns kind of happening in other sorts of ways. And it's the way that we're going to organize this course of these 5 themes, whether that's a 7-week course or an 8-week course. You can, as we kind of move along in our syllabus, you can sort of read what our course purpose and objectives are, and how we will engage in that with a variety of different ways. There are 2 required textbooks for the course. The first is the New Oxford Annotated Bible, which maybe you've heard about this. before, but it might be new to some. It's the most common book that we use for academic study of the Bible, and it has all kinds of helpful charts and essays and articles. And I would encourage you that this is the required textbook rather than using a devotional study Bible that won't have the same kinds of academic resources for you. And the second, which you'll need much later in the course, is this book by Bernard Anderson called The Unfolding Drama of the Bible. This is what your final paper will be using this extensively. So definitely pick up a copy of both of these things. Just a note on equity, it's not my intention to cause any sort of economic hardship in the course by requiring you to purchase 2 books. But if that's an issue for you, you actually have a number of different options. The first is to connect with the librarians and actually use these books, which are available on physical reserve in the DeWitt Library, which that's a perfectly acceptable way of doing this course and taking careful notes along the way. But if you're not within driving distance of the sort of Northwest Iowa area, you can also register also with the library using interlibrary loan with your Northwestern ID and get those sent to you and use those instead. And finally, if none of those options work, whether purchasing on Amazon, using the library, physical copies, or your own interlibrary loan copies, please do just arrange to make some private arrangements with me, and we'll find some accommodations so that you can still take this course and get the resources that you need to succeed. It is important that you do have those resources available to you by module 2, because you will need a copy of those. They are provided for you in the first week, but you'll need those for the second. So yeah, thanks for doing that. In terms of the course requirements, I'd like you to think about this course in terms of rhythm. So I'll actually start there first. Think about this in the sense of before the class, prepare by doing the readings and watching all of the recordings. And then during the actual class, participate in the discussions and write those. Those are due on Mondays at midnight. And if your discussion post is chosen, if it's written well and chosen, then you don't have to post a response, which is wonderful. So that's 3 points for you. And then kind of in an examine way, after you sort of read and reviewed all the content, there are weekly quizzes both on Wednesdays and Fridays. And then afterwards is sort of a way to reflect at the end of the week. There's a reflection essay also due on Fridays. And then oftentimes on Saturdays, there is a biblical message assignment. And at the very end of the course, there's a final biblical story paper. Just kind of a note on writing well. One of the major goals of this course is to engage the Bible theologically and academically, and to learn to write about the Bible well. So writing well in your assignments means choosing a topic and writing about it in a clear, concise, and thesis-centered way, which means please write creatively. I like to read interesting essays, and I hope you like to write them. Please use your own words, and please properly cite your sources using the MLA or APA Chicago style. If you have any questions about citation styles, you can certainly connect with the library, or I'm more than willing to also go with you and use some Zotero resources, or however best we can do that together. In terms of the actual requirements, there are discussion threads, which there are 6 of them and a total of 10% of your grade. There are multiple choice quizzes, which are worth 30%, and the lowest grade will be dropped. There are 6 reflection essays, which are also worth 10%. These are easy points, especially if you write them well. You'll get full credit. There's the biblical message assignment, and that's 25% total of your grade. There's some extensive instructions on Blackboard, and that can be done ahead of time, which is a nice way if you have different constraints on your time and you're trying to work ahead. And then finally, the biblical story paper, which is a 4 to 5 page sort of culminating paper. A slight variation on this is this time for this course, you can receive 2 additional bonus points towards your final paper grade if you submit a draft of your paper by Saturday, February 25th, and you also schedule a Zoom feedback review session with me before the March 3rd deadline. So what that means is submit the draft by the 25th, sometime before the 25th, if you get that done before then, but it has to be before March 3rd that we do some sort of Zoom feedback. And that way your final paper is a much better product at the end. In terms of participation, just Some of these things you already know from other courses is make sure that your files upload to Blackboard correctly so I can read them and grade them. Please don't use Apple Pages. I do have an Apple computer, so that's okay, but Word and PDF really are the best for Blackboard. A note too is that your quizzes will disappear after the due date, so do keep on top of those quizzes. And then in terms of plagiarism, I have a zero tolerance policy on plagiarism and cheating. Please don't plagiarize, especially on like things like your reflection essays that are supposed to be in your own words anyway. Please cite correctly. That's also plagiarism if you're not citing correctly. It's just not fun. So let's not do that process. The grading scale is on the syllabus, and that's consistent with Northwestern. And you can certainly continue to look at the rest of the syllabus requirements. But just a note on why do we take this course? Why is this something that Northwestern has decided that you need? Northwestern is unabashedly a Christian college. It's who we are, and it's not just a part of our tradition or history as a university, but each professor is a confessing Christian, and we're proud to infuse and integrate our Christian faith into all that we do, because we know that the Bible is the basis for our faith, and it's how we know how to act in the world, and and not necessarily as a behavior management thing, but as a way of knowing how to integrate our faith into our whole life. And we want every student to be able to integrate a biblical understanding, whether that's in their major or career or just in the rest of their life. But in order to actually integrate that, you have to know a little bit about what's in the Bible, which is why this is a required course across disciplines. So I hope that you enjoy this, that you peruse the website, that you give yourself some time to just review the course content, and I will see you all in Module 1. So thanks.